Hello, on this episode of DCU Daily, we're talking about some fantastic news. If you're a fan of DC, I'm sure you're wondering what is going on with this new DCU while all the strikes happen in Hollywood, where we have got the writers, the actors. I mean, it may be coming to an end soon, but we're still kind of in the thick of it. Progress is being made, but progress is also being made on the DC front. It looks like James Gunn, who has finished the script for Superman Legacy, has been busy along with Peter Safran, with David Zaslav, working on expanding their footprint as they prepare to basically put out as many as 2 to 4 projects a year, including TV shows and movies. So this entire time we've been wondering, well, are they going to be filming this stuff on site in a studio? I'm sure it's a mix of both. We have seen in the past DC studio movies have been shot on location, whether it's in the Nordics. I'm sure if you saw Zack Snyder's Justice League, there was a lot of on location stuff. In Joker, we were in New York, and with the Batman, we have been all over, including Liverpool. But one of the other key locations that movies like the Batman and even the Dark Knight and a lot of other recent DC projects like Aquaman and Aquaman: The Lost Kingdom, a lot of those movies have shot their stuff within these studio backlots, not just studio backlots, but just like these big sound stages. And amongst some of the most popular and iconic soundstage studios in the world is Leavesden Studios in the UK in London. So John, with me today, I want to ask you a question here. We've heard the news that Leavesden Studios is expanding their production hub. Like Warner Brothers owns this studio space, and they're going to almost double the amount of sound stages and in terms of square footage that they have available. And a lot of that new space is going to be dedicated to DC Studios productions. So, what does that mean for you as a fan of DC, and how do you see that playing out for the future of the DCU?
It shows that Gunn, Safran, and especially Zaslav have a lot of confidence in the DCU. If they're expanding, doubling the amount of space that's in Leavesden Studios, creating, I believe it was like thousands upon thousands of UK jobs. That means they have a lot of confidence. They in Gunn they trust, you know. So I feel like there is so much writing on this, and I feel like they're like, this is definitely going to make us money. This is definitely something that the fans love. It's someone who's behind all of this is a DC fan, and they're going to make sure that this is going to be the best reboot, the best DC adaptations that they can possibly do. And I have a lot of confidence that they're definitely going to create something truly special with Legacy and on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was looking at this story and thinking to myself, the first thought that came to mind was Marvel does a lot of production. Obviously, they've done over 30 movies at this point. They've done like a dozen TV shows, and they continue to pile on. Like every year, we're seeing like Loki season 2 is about to come out, and we've got the Marvels on deck. So with Marvel Studios, you look at how they produce their shows and movies. They have what's called Pinewood Studios in Atlanta. Now, Pinewood isn't necessarily owned; they're not owned by Disney, but Disney is like their biggest client because almost every Marvel project films there. Every time you hear some production, kind of news, you're like, oh yeah, they're in Atlanta, or like Nick Fury or like Samuel L. Jackson is in Atlanta filming multiple projects. When he was filming Secret Invasion, then he was off filming at the same time. He just goes from one soundstage to another to film his scenes in the Marvels, like just back and forth,
Right.
back and forth. So they have like a huge production hub in Atlanta at Pinewood Studios. And of course, Warner Brothers has got a pedigree of, of course, their own backlot in Burbank. They've got a lot of, a footprint over there. We have seen some key scenes, especially even in some of the recent projects. Like, when Ben Affleck went back and did a bunch of his scenes for The Flash, we know that those were shot at the Warner Brothers backlot. We know he was there to film some stuff for the new Aquaman movie, although it looks like that may not be making into the final cut.
Yeah, who
But
knows?
nonetheless, as far as Leavesden Studios go, I mean, for those of you guys who are not aware, Leavesden has a huge history with Hollywood. Virtually every single Harry Potter movie has shot at Leavesden Studios sound stages. Like I mentioned, The Dark Knight had some scenes that they shot there. Inception, Christopher Nolan's very familiar with this space. We have also talked about even like Star Wars, The Phantom Menace. the primary filming location for that movie, because so much of it was shot on green screen sound stages, was Leavesden Studios. And even today, like the Batman, like a lot of the stuff that they shot, even with some of the car chase sequences, where they put them on this virtual stage, and they did shoot some of the car sequences on in actual streets and stuff, but there was a lot of stuff that was done on these virtual sound stages, and where you have just these LEDs, boards all around you, kind of like what the ILM calls a volume. But a lot of that for the Batman was done at Leavesden Studios as well, and of course, the two Aquaman movies have shot a lot of their blue screen, green screen, based sequences in Leavesden Studios. So now, granted, they've already done a lot of production like that there in the past. I just love the fact that we're gonna get to see them almost kind of plant a flag in London and be like, this is our hub. This is where we're producing everything. If you're producing multiple TV shows and movies, and then from a physical production standpoint, like I mentioned, if you've got a A-list actor like a Samuel L. Jackson, and you can just have him be going back and forth between two sound stages in the same location to work on two high, profile projects like Secret Invasion and the Marvels, that's an insane cost savings. So as a producer, like Peter Safran and James Gunn, I'm sure they were looking at them, and David Zaslav, as from a business standpoint, it just makes sense that if you have somebody like James Gunn working on two projects, maybe like let's say Peacemaker season two and Superman Legacy, which we don't think are going to be producing in production at the same time, because obviously if James Gunn is directing both, it's not he can't focus on both. But maybe more a better example might be David Cornsweet, right? He's filming Superman Legacy, but he's going to make a cameo in a DC TV show, like maybe let's say Booster Gold, and to go into production around the same time. And he's able to kind of go between the sound stages and do both at the same, let's say within the same set of weeks and months. So you don't have to fly him out from Burbank all the way to London and back and forth. That's a huge, huge benefit. It's a huge cost savings, and considering the fact that Warner Brothers owns Leavesden, it gives them an inside track to access to all those sound stages. Whereas, like I said, Marvel, they are by far and away the biggest client at Pinewood. They're not necessarily like they don't have an ownership stake as far as we're aware. So yes, Pinewood could easily, rent out their space to somebody else. Granted, they have like 23 some odd sound stages, so I'm sure they'll always have enough room for Marvel. But I do I like the vertical integration that Warner Brothers kind of owns the studio space, so they can really have priority access to it whenever they like, which I believe is, at least on paper, feels like an advantage over Marvel. And certainly, if DC is going to try to, rehab its brand over these next few years, then I think this is another, a feather in their cap. And John, I just want to ask you, now that we've got this news out there, what are you expecting to see from this? What is this signal to? Is this just another? Because to me, this is another sign that DC is a huge priority for Warner Brothers Discovery. The new regime really respects the brand. Like, is that? Would you agree with that sentiment?
I think after the last few CEOs have been kind of rickety when it comes to DC, like handling Zack Snyder's vision and all of that was a little bit not a priority. It shows that they're really changing. They're like, okay, DC is our biggest asset. We got to go full in on it. And it's sort of in terms of expanding all of this, spending money to make money. As you said, it's cost saving. Sure, they're spending a lot of money now, but they're going to be saving a ton of money by doing all of these sound stages all together with all these productions. So it's definitely it. I'm. It's definitely hopeful. It's definitely very hopeful for the future of the DCU, especially when the superhero trend is kind of going down a bit. Maybe this will reinvigorate it. Maybe we're gonna go get like a renaissance, maybe like a second like era, like a silver age of the overall superhero subgenre. It could
Yeah.
definitely be really interesting, and it's very hopeful.
Absolutely. I love it. And you know what? Like, we've been talking about this as a DC Studios centered conversation, but quite frankly, I mean, Leavesden Studios has been, open for business to all of Hollywood and beyond for this entirety of its existence. We mentioned, like Star Wars, Harry Potter. I know Harry Potter is a Warner Brothers franchise, but of course Star Wars, Lucasfilm. So there's a lot of, big movies that have shot there that aren't necessarily Warner Brothers pictures. So yes, this will be huge. I mean, and I'm sure they're going to use this to film a lot of that new Harry Potter TV show that's going to be on Max as well. But of course, for us, we're excited to see the impact that it has on new DC projects, including probably Superman Legacy. We've got like Swamp Thing, we've got Booster Gold, Batman Brave and the Bold, of course the Batman Part 2, Joker Fall. I think it's mostly done filming, but maybe there's a third movie in that trilogy. So guys, let us know in the comments below what you think about this news. This huge expansion that Leavesden Studios in the UK and London, they're almost going to double their footprint. And Warner Brothers has a lot on its plate coming up, including the Harry Potter series, all the new DC projects. And Peter Safran and James Gunn mentioned, like, hey, this is going to be our production hub. We're going to plant a flag, and this is where we're going to work out of. So this is huge news, guys. Let us know in the comments below what you think this means for the future of DC. And of course, like and subscribe for more content like this.